It was supposed to be a normal Friday evening, the kind where a woman gathers every ounce of courage left in her heart to give love one more chance. The restaurant lights glowed warm against the soft hum of chatter, silverware clinking gently as laughter floated through the air. But for Rachel Parker, this evening would not end with laughter. It would end with words sharp enough to cut deeper than any blade ever could. She had spent hours preparing, not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because she wanted to feel worthy again. A pale blue dress, the one her best friend had convinced her to wear, framed her soft brown hair and gentle eyes. She had been divorced for 3 years now, with a little boy named Eli who meant everything to her. Dating hadn't been easy, not because of her scars, but because people often treated single mothers like broken things. The man she was meeting tonight, Chris, had seemed kind over messages, confident, funny, and successful. He was exactly what Rachel thought she needed to start over. She didn't expect perfection. She only wanted someone who wouldn't look at her like a mistake. But sometimes, life throws cruel reminders before it shows you kindness. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us to never judge a person's worth, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories. It helps us keep spreading hope through real and emotional tales like this one. When Chris arrived, he was well-dressed, his tailored gray suit and polished watch screaming self-importance. His smile was charming, but his eyes flickered with quiet judgment the moment they landed on her. Rachel noticed it, the same look she had seen too many times, the one that measured her, compared her, and found her lacking. The dinner started fine, polite small talk about work and weather, but soon his tone shifted. He asked about her past marriage, about Eli, and about why she was single. Rachel answered with honesty, something she had promised herself she would always offer. She told him about the long nights, about trying to rebuild her life after being left by a husband who couldn't handle responsibility. She told him about raising her son alone, about finding work as a receptionist while studying online to become a nurse. Chris leaned back, swirling his drink. "So you're a single mom?" he said with a smirk. "Guess that means someone's already had the first run." Rachel froze. The air in her chest thickened. "I'm sorry?" she asked, hoping she misheard him. He chuckled, tilting his glass. "I mean, no offense. You seem nice, but honestly, most guys aren't looking to play stepdad. It's just how it is. You know, used goods and all." For a moment, everything stopped. The clinking of plates, the quiet jazz music, even her breathing. Used goods. The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel, echoing every insecurity she had fought to silence. Rachel's eyes stung, but she swallowed the lump in her throat. She wanted to leave, to run far away and never look back. But shame pinned her to the chair. She could feel eyes around the restaurant turning toward her, whispering silently, "Poor woman." Then, from across the room, a man's chair scraped against the floor. He was tall, with kind blue eyes and dark hair pulled slightly back. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up, and beside him sat a little girl no older than 7, quietly coloring while her father finished dinner. He had heard everything. Without hesitation, the man stood, walked toward their table, and said calmly but firmly, "You might want to rethink your words." Chris looked up, irritated. "Excuse me? This isn't your business." The stranger didn't respond to the insult. Instead, he turned his eyes toward Rachel. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his tone carrying a warmth that nearly broke her heart. She nodded weakly, but her trembling hands said otherwise. The man, whose name she would soon learn was Daniel Cole, shifted his gaze back to Chris. "You know," he said, "my daughter was coloring quietly over there, and she heard you." "What you just said?" She looked up and asked me why someone would call another person used goods. "You've got a right to your opinions, but remember, there's a little girl here learning what men are supposed to sound like," Chris scoffed. "Whatever, man. I was just being honest. Honesty without kindness is cruelty, Daniel said evenly. And if you think a woman who survived heartbreak, raises her child alone, and still shows up with grace is used, then maybe you don't understand what real worth looks like. The restaurant fell silent. Every eye turned to them, but this time not in pity. This time in quiet admiration for the man who spoke what many wished they could. Rachel finally stood, her knees trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, barely able to meet Daniel's eyes. Chris mumbled something under his breath and grabbed his coat, muttering that the night was ruined. But Rachel didn't care. For the first time in years, she didn't feel ashamed of who she was. She felt seen. Daniel watched him leave, then gently smiled. "Don't let people like that decide your value," he said softly. "They only show you what they lack." She wanted to thank him again, but words failed. Daniel's daughter tugged at his sleeve then, her soft voice breaking the heavy silence. "Daddy," she said, "can she sit with us?" That night, under the soft restaurant lights that once made Rachel feel exposed, she found warmth she didn't expect. They moved to Daniel's table, and he introduced her to his daughter, Lily. The little girl beamed at her with innocent admiration, showing her the rainbow she had drawn. Rachel smiled back, and something inside her, something she thought had died long ago, stirred again. Over the next hour, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Daniel was a widower, raising Lily alone after losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago. Life hadn't been kind to him either, yet he carried gentleness like it was his armor. He didn't talk about what he'd lost. He talked about what he'd learned, about resilience, empathy, and how people who've been broken often love deeper because they know the cost of pain. Rachel listened, her eyes shining. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel judged. She felt human again. When the evening ended, Daniel offered to walk her to her car. They talked under the cool night sky, their steps slow, their hearts unexpectedly light. He didn't ask for her number right away. He simply said, "You seem like someone who deserves more good days. I hope we run into each other again." And they did, 2 weeks later at the same restaurant. This time, by coincidence, or perhaps fate, Rachel was there with a friend, and Daniel was having dinner with Lily. Their eyes met across the room, and both smiled with the kind of recognition that only life's quiet survivors share. One meeting turned into 2, then 3. Soon, it became routine. Coffee on Sundays, park visits with Lily, late-night calls that stretched into laughter and shared memories. Rachel learned that kindness wasn't about grand gestures. It was in the way Daniel listened, the way he never made her feel like she needed to prove herself. He told her once, "You know, the world doesn't get to decide what use means. The heart isn't a thing you throw away. It's something that heals stronger when treated right." Rachel's heart finally began to believe it. Months later, when Daniel introduced her to Lily officially as someone special, Rachel cried quietly afterward. Not because she was sad, but because she finally saw herself as worthy of being loved again. She had spent years thinking she was a mistake someone left behind. But in Daniel's eyes, she saw the reflection of a woman who had survived and still had light to give. And somewhere, she hoped that man who called her used goods one night might someday see what true beauty and worth look like, because he had missed the chance to witness it himself. Years later, when Rachel walked down the aisle in a simple white dress with Lily scattering flower petals ahead of her and Eli carrying the rings, every scar, every tear, every cruel word she'd endured finally made sense. They had all been leading her to this moment, to someone who saw her not as damaged, but as complete. When the vows were said and Daniel looked into her eyes, he whispered, "You're not someone's second choice, Rachel. You were always meant to be my first miracle." And in that moment, the world felt soft again. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that kindness can heal what cruelty breaks, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Help us keep spreading hope and compassion across the world. Special request: comment below. Kindness still exists. If you believe that one act of courage can change a life forever. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice to stand up and one heart to heal what others tried to break.